The Awakening. The Galactic Confederation had ruled the known universe for over 3 centuries, a collection of 27 advanced species who had achieved what they called perfect harmony. Their massive ships patrolled trade routes between thousands of worlds. Their technology allowed them to harness the power of stars, and their diplomatic corps maintained peace across millions of light years. They were, by all accounts, the undisputed masters of the galaxy. Admiral Veraxis, a towering Alcorian with scaled skin that shimmered with iridescent blues and greens, stood on the observation deck of the Confederation flagship Eternal Harmony. His 4 eyes scanned the holographic display showing the known territories. Each region was color-coded to indicate which species governed it, creating a tapestry of power that had remained largely unchanged for generations. Admiral, his second-in-command, Thera, approached with the swift, nervous gait characteristic of her species. "We've detected something unusual." Veraxis turned, noting the tension in Thera's posture. The smaller reptilian officer was typically composed, but now her tail twitched with evident agitation. "Define unusual, Commander." "A signal, sir, originating from the Desolation Zone." The Desolation Zone. The name alone sent a chill through Veraxis' spine. It was a region of space so devastated by ancient warfare that it had been declared permanently uninhabitable. No Confederation vessel had ventured there in over 200 years. "What kind of signal?" "That's just it, sir." Thera's voice dropped to a whisper. "It's human." The word hung in the air between them, a forbidden utterance that neither had spoken aloud in years. Humans, the species that had nearly destroyed the galaxy. The species that the Confederation had been forced to exterminate for the safety of all other life. Or so they thought. "Impossible," Veraxis said, but even as he spoke, he knew Thera wouldn't have brought this to him if she wasn't certain. The humans were eradicated in the Great Purge. Their homeworld was rendered uninhabitable. Their colonies were dismantled. "Yes, sir. That's what the records show. But our sensors are detecting communication patterns that match known human encryption algorithms. And it's not just random noise. It's organized, deliberate." Veraxis stared at the Desolation Zone on the map, a dark blot that represented hundreds of dead star systems. "How long has this signal been broadcasting?" "We can't say for certain. It was only detected because we upgraded the long-range sensors last month. It could have been transmitting for years. Or centuries," Veraxis murmured. He made a decision. "Assemble a reconnaissance team. Top scientists, xenohistorians, and military personnel. We need to investigate this. Quietly." "Sir." Thera's brow ridges raised in surprise. "Confederation protocol demands that any potential human activity be reported immediately to the High Council. And it will be, Commander. But only after we've confirmed what we're dealing with." Veraxis turned back to the holographic display. "If humans have somehow survived, we need to know how many, where they are, and what they're planning. The last thing we need is a panic throughout the Confederation." Admiral Kyrian of the Galactic Confederation scientific vessel Seeker had led dozens of exploration missions into uncharted space, but never had she faced a mission as potentially dangerous, or as classified, as this one. The sleek, silver ship glided silently through the outer reaches of the Desolation Zone, its advanced stealth systems masking its presence from any potential observers. Kyrian, a Vosian with crystalline skin that refracted light in prismatic patterns, stood with perfect stillness on the bridge. Her species was known for their analytical minds and emotional control, traits that had served her well throughout her career. "Signal source identified," announced the ship's chief scientist, Jen. The 4-armed Corellian manipulated the controls with practiced precision. "It's coming from a small planetoid in System X-37. Preliminary scans indicate artificial structures." "Any signs of life?" Kyrian asked. "Difficult to say at this distance. The planetoid has a dense atmosphere that's interfering with our bioscanners. We'll need to get closer." Kyrian nodded. "Take us in, but but maintains stealth protocols. If there are humans down there, I want to observe them before they detect us. The ship moved deeper into the desolation zone. Outside the viewports, they could see the remnants of ancient battles, asteroid fields that had once been planets, the dim stars struggling to shine through clouds of cosmic dust, and occasionally, the twisted wreckage of massive ships that had been destroyed centuries ago. "It's hard to believe anyone could survive here," said Lieutenant Null, a young officer on his first deep space mission. "Humans were always resourceful," Kyrian replied, her voice clinical and detached. "It was one of the reasons they were so dangerous." As the ship approached the planetoid, the sensor readings became clearer. The artificial structures were indeed settlements, sophisticated ones with energy signatures that suggested advanced technology. And there were life signs, thousands of them. "This is impossible," Jen whispered, staring at the readings. "According to our history, all human settlements were destroyed. Their technology was confiscated or destroyed. How could they have built all this?" "Perhaps they didn't," Kyrian said, her mind racing with possibilities. "Perhaps they've been here all along." The Seeker established orbit around the planetoid, its cameras and sensors recording everything they could about the settlement below. It appeared to be a fully functioning colony, with habitation domes, industrial facilities, and what looked like a shipyard. "Admiral," Zhen's voice was tense, "we're being scanned." Before Kyrian could respond, the ship's communication system activated. A voice spoke in clear, unaccented Galactic standard. "Confederation vessel, you have entered restricted space. Identify yourself or be destroyed." The bridge fell silent. The voice was unmistakably human. "Open a channel," Kyrian ordered, straightening her uniform. "This is Admiral Kyrian of the Galactic Confederation vessel Seeker. We are on a scientific mission and meant no intrusion." There was a pause before the voice responded. "Your stealth systems suggest otherwise, Admiral. However, since you've come all this way, perhaps it's time we had a conversation. You may land at the coordinates we're transmitting. A delegation will meet you." The transmission ended abruptly. "Admiral, we can't possibly land," Zhen protested. "This could be a trap." "Of course it could," Kyrian replied calmly. "But we've been invited by a species that's supposed to be extinct. I think that warrants some risk." She turned to her crew. "Prepare a landing party. Heavy security detail, but weapons set to non-lethal. We're here to gather information, not start another war." The surface of the planetoid was harsh and unforgiving, rocky terrain under a sky tinted green by the atmospheric composition. But the human settlement was a marvel of engineering. Domes of transparent material protected areas of vegetation. Buildings constructed from materials that seemed to absorb and redirect the limited sunlight available. And everywhere, signs of activity. Kyrian led her team from the landing pad toward a large structure that appeared to be the colony's administrative center. They were met by a group of humans, 5 of them, dressed in matching gray uniforms that bore no insignia or rank markers that Kyrian could recognize. The leader of the human delegation stepped forward. She was tall for a human, with dark skin and silver hair cut short against her skull. Her eyes were sharp and evaluating. "Admiral Kyrian," she said, her voice matching the one they had heard on the communication channel. "I am Commander Ilara. Welcome to Haven." Kyrian inclined her head slightly. "Commander, thank you for allowing us to land." "You've come a long way to find us," Ilara said, her tone neutral. "I assume you detected our signal." "Yes, a signal that shouldn't exist, coming from a species that was believed to be extinct." Ilara's lips curved into a cold smile. "And yet here we are. Not as extinct as your Confederation would have preferred." The tension between them was palpable. Kyrian maintained her composure. "We have many questions, Commander." "I imagine you do. Just as we have many questions about why the Confederation decided to eradicate our species." Ilara gestured toward the building behind her. "Come, we have much to discuss." The interior of the administrative building was surprisingly elegant, with clean lines and spaces filled with plants that Kirian recognized from Earth's historical records. They were led to a conference room where several more humans waited, including an elderly man whose presence seemed to command respect from the others. Admiral Kirian, Ilara introduced, "This is Director Marcus, the leader of our colony." Director Marcus studied Kirian with eyes that seemed to hold centuries of wisdom, or perhaps centuries of pain. "So the Confederation has finally found us," he said, his voice rough with age. "I wondered how long it would take." "Director," Kirian acknowledged. "I must confess, until recently, the Confederation had no idea that humans had survived the Great Purge." "The Great Purge," Marcus repeated, his voice dripping with contempt. "Is that what you call it? The systematic extermination of billions of people, the destruction of Earth, the hunting down of human colonies across the galaxy." Kirian hesitated. Her historical education had taught her that the humans had been dangerous, that they had developed technologies that threatened the stability of the galaxy itself, that the purge had been necessary for the survival of all other species. History records that humans were developing weapons capable of destroying star systems, she said carefully. That diplomatic solutions were attempted but failed. Marcus laughed bitterly. "Is that what your histories say? How convenient for the Confederation's conscience." Ilara placed a hand on the director's shoulder. "We've waited a long time for this moment, Marcus. Let's not waste it on recriminations." She turned to Kirian. "The truth, Admiral, is that humanity was on the verge of a technological breakthrough that would have shifted the balance of power in the galaxy. Not weapons, energy. Clean, unlimited energy that would have freed worlds from dependency on Confederation resources. The null space drive," one of the other humans said. "That's what our ancestors called it." Kirian frowned. "I've never heard of such technology." "Of course not," Marcus said, "because the Confederation destroyed all evidence of it, along with most of our species. They couldn't allow us to advance beyond their control." The implications of what they were saying were staggering. If true, it meant that the Confederation's most sacred historical narrative was a lie, that the humans had been victims, not aggressors. "You've been here all this time?" Kirian asked, trying to process what she was hearing. "In the desolation zone." "Not just here," Ilara said. "This is merely one colony. There are others, hidden throughout the galaxy. We've been watching, waiting, rebuilding our strength." A chill ran down Kirian's spine. "For what purpose? What do you think, Admiral?" Marcus's eyes bored into hers. "Revenge." As if on cue, the lights in the room dimmed, and a holographic display activated in the center of the conference table. It showed a map of the galaxy, but with strange energy signatures pulsing at strategic points throughout Confederation space. "For 200 years, we've been placing our technology throughout your territory," Ilara explained. "Null space beacons, undetectable by your sensors, each one capable of generating enough energy to tear a hole in the fabric of spacetime." "You're bluffing," Jen said, speaking for the first time since they'd entered the building. "Such technology isn't possible." In response, Marcus touched a control on the table. The hologram zoomed in on a distant star system, one that Kirian recognized as an important Confederation military hub. "Would you like a demonstration, Admiral?" Marcus asked softly. Before Kirian could respond, the hologram showed a small flare of energy. Then, to her horror, she watched as a rupture formed in space, expanding outward at an impossible rate. In seconds, it had engulfed 3 of the system's planets. "That was uninhabited space," Marcus said, as the rupture closed itself. "A small demonstration. But each beacon can do the same, at any target we choose." "You would destroy innocent worlds?" Kirian asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Become the monsters the Confederation claimed you were." "We are offering the Confederation a choice," Ilara said. "Acknowledge the crimes committed against humanity. Make reparations, and recognize our right to exist as equals in this galaxy. And if the Confederation refuses? Marcus's expression hardened. Then we will do what we must to ensure our survival. The beacons will activate, and the Confederation will fall. You have 3 standard days to bring our terms to your leaders. Kyrian realized she was facing something far more dangerous than a lost colony of humans. She was facing a reckoning, a moment that could determine the fate of the galaxy itself. "I will deliver your message," she said finally, "but I urge you to consider the consequences of the path you've chosen. Revenge may feel justified, but it rarely brings peace." Peace. Marcus stood, his frail body suddenly seeming to radiate power. "We don't want peace, Admiral. We want justice. And after 200 years of waiting, we will have it, one way or another." As Kyrian and her team were escorted back to their ship, the Admiral's mind raced with the implications of what she had learned. The Confederation faced a threat unlike any in its history, from a species it had tried to eradicate, now returned with the power to do the same. The humans had awakened from their long slumber, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The reckoning. The Galactic Confederation High Council chamber had never been so silent. The vast circular room, with its soaring crystalline dome that revealed the stars above, normally hummed with the quiet conversations of the 27 representatives of the ruling species. But now, as Admiral Kyrian finished delivering her report, not a sound could be heard except for the soft hiss of atmospheric regulators. Supreme Counselor Dravix, an ancient Nexurian whose translucent body pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, was the first to break the silence. "You expect us to believe that a species we eradicated 2 centuries ago has not only survived but now threatens the entire Confederation." His voice was melodic, but edged with skepticism. Kyrian stood firm before the semicircle of counselors. "I have provided sensor readings, communications logs, and visual evidence of the human colony. I have also shown you the recording of their demonstration of the null space technology, which could be fabricated," countered Counselor Mira of the Phylosians. Her metallic exoskeleton clicked as she leaned forward. "A bluff designed to force us into recognizing their legitimacy. A bluff that brought you detailed scans of our ship systems before we even detected their presence," Kyrian asked. "A bluff that allowed them to activate a spatial anomaly hundreds of light-years away with pinpoint precision. With respect, Counselor, I believe the threat is real." The counselors exchanged uneasy glances. Admiral Veraxis, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward. "The question is not whether the threat is real," he said gravely. "The question is how we respond." "We crush them," said Counselor Thrix, a reptilian warrior whose species had led many of the Confederation's military campaigns. "We locate these hidden colonies and finish what our ancestors started, and risk activating these null-space beacons," Kyrian challenged. "They claim to have placed them throughout our territory. Even if we could find and neutralize some, we couldn't get them all before they retaliated." Supreme Counselor Dravix raised a limb for silence. "Admiral Kyrian, you spent time among these humans. What is your assessment? Are they truly intent on destruction, or is there room for negotiation?" Kyrian considered the question carefully. "They are angry, and with justification if their claims about the original conflict are true. They seek acknowledgement of past wrongs and recognition of their right to exist. But there is something else." She paused, recalling the conversation she had overheard, the patterns she had observed. "I believe they are divided. Director Marcus and some of the older humans seem set on revenge at any cost. Commander Ilara and others of her generation appeared more open to a peaceful resolution. And what of their claims regarding the true cause of the conflict?" asked a counselor Kyrian didn't recognize, one of the newer species to join the Confederation. Could our historical accounts be wrong? But uncomfortable silence fell over the chamber. Most of the species represented had not been part of the Confederation during the human conflict. Their knowledge came only from the official records. Admiral Veraxis finally spoke, his voice heavy. "The complete records of the human conflict are sealed, accessible only to the Supreme Counselor and the High Admiral. This has been our practice for generations. Then perhaps it is time to unseal them, Kyrian suggested. If we are to face this crisis, we must understand its origins. Supreme Counselor Dravix's bioluminescence dimmed, a sign of deep thought among his kind. The records will be examined, he said finally. In the meantime, we must prepare for all possibilities. Admiral Veraxis, mobilize the fleet. If these humans have the capability they claim, we must be ready to defend our core worlds. And what of their ultimatum? Kyrian asked. They expect an answer in 3 standard days. You will return to them, Dravix decided. Tell them the Confederation requires more time to consider their demands. Buy us time to investigate their claims and assess our options. As the council session ended, Kyrian found herself walking alongside Admiral Veraxis in the grand corridor outside. You believe there's truth to their accusations, don't you? She asked quietly. Veraxis didn't immediately respond. When he did, his voice was barely above a whisper. My great-grandfather was part of the fleet that carried out the final assaults against the human colonies. He never spoke of it, except once, near the end of his life. He said it was the greatest shame of his career, that he had followed orders he knew were wrong. Then why continue the deception for centuries? Some lies become too big to take back, Veraxis said simply, and some truths are too dangerous to face. The return journey to Haven took less time than Kyrian had anticipated. The humans had provided navigational data that allowed the Seeker to traverse the treacherous desolation zone with greater efficiency. As they approached the planetoid, Kyrian prepared herself for what would likely be a tense encounter. They're hailing us, Lieutenant Null reported. On screen, Kyrian ordered. Commander Ilara's face appeared on the view screen. Admiral, you've returned sooner than expected. I trust you bring the Confederation's response. I bring a request for more time, Kyrian said honestly. The Council is reviewing your demands and examining historical records related to the original conflict. Ilara's expression hardened. More time. Or more time to locate and neutralize our beacons. The Confederation is not currently engaged in any operations against your people, Kyrian assured her. We genuinely wish to understand what happened and find a peaceful resolution. Director Marcus predicted this response. Ilara said coldly. He believes it is merely a delaying tactic. Then allow me to speak with him directly, Kyrian suggested, face to face, not through transmissions that can be misinterpreted. There was a pause as Ilara appeared to consult with someone off-screen. Finally, she nodded. Very well. You may land, alone this time. Your crew remains aboard your vessel. Kyrian agreed, despite the protests of her security chief. Sometimes diplomacy required personal risk. The landing pad was eerily empty when Kyrian's shuttle touched down. Only Commander Ilara waited, standing straight-backed against the harsh landscape. I appreciate you agreeing to meet, Kyrian said as she descended the ramp. It wasn't my decision, Ilara replied. Director Marcus wishes to show you something. He believes it may help the Confederation understand what's at stake. She led Kyrian through the colony, but instead of returning to the administrative center, they headed toward a structure Kyrian hadn't noticed during her previous visit. A dome set apart from the others, surrounded by a perimeter of energy fields. What is this place? Kyrian asked as they approached. We call it the Memory Vault, Ilara explained. It contains the complete records of Earth, our colonies, and the war that nearly destroyed us. Not the sanitized version your Confederation teaches, but the truth, recorded by those who lived through it. Inside the dome was a circular chamber filled with technology that Kyrian didn't recognize. At the center stood Director Marcus, his frail hand resting on a control panel. Admiral, he greeted her without warmth. I understand you wish to know more about why we threaten your precious Confederation. I wish to understand the truth, Kyrian corrected gently, so that we might find a path forward that doesn't lead to more destruction. Marcus studied her for a long moment. Very well. But be warned, What you're about to experience is not a simulation or a recording. The memory vault connects directly to the experiences of those who lived through these events. You will feel what they felt, see what they saw. Before Carrion could respond, Marcus activated the device. The room around them dissolved, replaced by visions so vivid and immediate that Carrion gasped. She was no longer standing in the chamber. She was on Earth, in the final days before the war. She saw through human eyes as the first Confederation ships arrived, not as enemies but as allies, offering technology and knowledge. She felt the hope and excitement as human scientists worked alongside alien colleagues, developing the null space technology that promised to revolutionize energy production throughout the galaxy. Then came the shift, subtle at first, then unmistakable. Confederation representatives becoming more controlling, demanding oversight of all research, restrictions on which human colonies could access the new technology. And finally, the ultimatum. Surrender all research on the null space drive to Confederation control, or be declared a threat to galactic stability. Carrion felt the human confusion and anger at this betrayal. She witnessed the debates among Earth's leaders, some arguing for compliance, others for resistance, and then the horror as the first Confederation strikes came without warning, targeting research facilities and military installations. The visions accelerated, showing the rapid escalation of the conflict. Earth fighting back with desperate courage, but outmatched by Confederation technology. Human colonies falling one by one. Billions dying as habitable worlds were rendered uninhabitable through ecological warfare. And through it all, the growing realization among the human survivors. This wasn't about security or stability. It was about power. The Confederation couldn't allow humans to possess technology that would make them truly independent, that might eventually challenge Confederation dominance. The final scenes were the most devastating. The last human fleets gathering for a desperate stand, not to win but to allow civilian ships to escape into the uncharted regions of space. A last transmission from Earth before it fell. Remember, survive, return. When the visions faded, Carrion found herself on her knees, tears streaming down her face. The emotions of those long-dead humans still echoed through her consciousness. Their fear, their courage, their determination to ensure their species would not be extinguished. "Now you understand," Marcus said softly, helping her to her feet. "What your Confederation did to us wasn't defense, it was genocide." Carrion struggled to reconcile what she had just experienced with the history she had been taught her entire life. If this is true, and I believe it is, then the Confederation has committed a crime beyond measure. "Yes," Marcus agreed, "and now we have the power to exact justice." Carrion looked at him directly. "But is destruction justice? You've shown me the horrors of the past. Would you inflict the same on countless innocent beings who had no part in those decisions? What would you have us do?" Marcus demanded. "Trust the same institution that tried to eradicate us." "I would have you break the cycle," Carrion said firmly. "Show the galaxy that humans are better than those who sought to destroy them." Ilara, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. "There are many among us who share the Admiral's view, Marcus. We've spent generations rebuilding, developing our technology, preparing for this moment. But revenge wasn't the only option our ancestors left us." "What are you suggesting?" Marcus asked, his voice heavy with the weight of centuries. "A demonstration of our power, yes, but followed by negotiation, not destruction," Ilara said. "We reveal ourselves to the galaxy on our terms. We show that we have the capability to defend ourselves. And then we offer a new beginning." 3 days later, the galaxy changed forever. Throughout Confederation space, thousands of null space beacons activated simultaneously, not to destroy, but to broadcast. On every world, in every ship, on every communication channel, the same message played. The true history of the human conflict, drawn from the memory vault, impossible to censor or deny. And as the truth spread, the carefully maintained order of the Confederation began to fracture. Species that had joined after the human conflict questioned the leadership that had hidden such atrocities. Older members faced internal division as their populations learned what had been done in their name. In the Grand Council chamber, no longer silent but filled with the chaos of accusation and denial, Admiral Kyrian stood before the assembled representatives. Beside her stood Commander Ilara and Director Marcus, the first humans to set foot in the chamber in 2 centuries. The humans have shown remarkable restraint, Kyrian addressed the council. They had the power to destroy us, yet they chose to expose the truth instead. Now we must decide how we respond, with denial and hostility, or with acknowledgement and atonement. Supreme Counselor Dravix, his bioluminescence dim with the shame of revelation, spoke for many when he said, "How can there be atonement for such a crime?" "Perhaps not atonement," Director Marcus replied, his voice softer than Kyrian had ever heard it. "But there can be a new beginning. Humanity doesn't seek the destruction of the Confederation, only recognition of our right to exist as equals and the acknowledgement of historical truth." Commander Ilara stepped forward. "We propose a treaty. The human colonies will join the Confederation as full members, with the same rights and responsibilities as all other species. In return, we will share our technological advances, including the null space drive, which can provide clean energy to worlds that currently lack it." "And the beacons?" Admiral Varaxis asked. "Will remain in place for now," Ilara said firmly. "A guarantee of our security until trust can be rebuilt, but they will never be used aggressively if the terms of our treaty are honored." The debate lasted for days, as the Council struggled with the implications of what had been revealed. Some members called for rejection of the human terms, arguing that capitulation would weaken the Confederation. Others saw an opportunity to reform an institution that had betrayed its founding principles. In the end, pragmatism prevailed. The Confederation could not afford a conflict with an enemy who held such a decisive technological advantage. And more importantly, many species genuinely wished to make amends for the crimes of the past. The Treaty of Haven was signed 1 standard month after the humans revealed themselves to the galaxy. Its terms were simple but profound. Full membership for humanity in the Confederation, reparations for the worlds destroyed in the Great Purge, and a commitment to historical truth in all Confederation educational systems. 1 year later, Admiral Kyrian stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned Confederation human hybrid vessel New Dawn. Beside her stood Commander Ilara, now serving as the first human representative to the Confederation Fleet Command. "Do you think it will last?" Kyrian asked, watching the stars stream by as the ship traveled using conventional drives. "This peace we've built." Ilara considered the question. "Peace is never guaranteed, but understanding makes it more likely. And we've taken the first steps toward true understanding." "And the null space technology? When will your people begin sharing it?" "The first power plants are already under construction on the worlds that need them most," Ilara said. Director Marcus insisted on that we begin by helping those the Confederation had neglected. Kyrian nodded. "A wise choice. It shows that humanity's return isn't just about power or revenge." "It never was," Ilara said softly. "Not really. Even in our darkest moments, what we wanted most was recognition, acknowledgement that we had the right to exist, to determine our own destiny." The ship's communication system chimed, indicating an incoming message from Confederation headquarters. Both officers straightened, knowing that their next mission would be the first true test of the new alliance. "Whatever challenges lie ahead," Kyrian said, "I believe our species will face them better together than apart." Ilara smiled, a genuine expression that reached her eyes. "As do I, Admiral. As do I." As they moved to answer the call, neither could know what the future held. But for the first time in centuries, it held the promise of genuine cooperation between species that had once been bitter enemies. The humans had returned not to destroy the galaxy, but to help forge it anew, stronger, more just, and more honest about its past. The reckoning had come, but it had brought not destruction but renewal. And perhaps that was the greatest revenge of all, to transform the institution that had sought to eradicate them into something worthy of humanity's forgiveness. The Galactic Confederation would never be the same, and that both Kyrian and Ilara knew was exactly as it should be.